You can make a difference in someone's life, including your own, with a job in home care. These jobs offer flexible schedules, healthcare, retirement options, and free training. They also provide paid time off and opportunities for overtime. Visit OregonHomeCareJobs.com to learn more and apply. That's OregonHomeCareJobs.com.
Each summer, Kenai Redfish Company travels to Alaska's Cook Inlet to sustainably fish wild salmon and then brings it back home to share with our community. Family owned and based in Northeast Portland, Kenai Red Salmon Shares offers households the opportunity to pre-order a portion of their premium flash frozen salmon to enjoy all year round. I know you've heard of farm to table. This is boat to table. Visit KenaiRed.com to place your order. That's KenaiRed.com. And be sure to use promo code CityCast15 to get $15 off. Tilt, the debut novel by Portland writer Emma Pattee, imagines the aftermath of a Cascadia subduction zone earthquake here in Portland, which experts say has a 1 in 3 chance of happening in the next 40 years or so. And though it's fiction, its harrowing picture is rooted in real-world science. As a journalist, Emma has reported on the danger that Portland schools' unreinforced masonry pose during an earthquake. So today on CityCast Portland, we're talking with Emma about the book, the reality behind it, and how she's worked through her own anxiety while acknowledging the threat of a devastating earthquake. It's Monday, June 23rd. I'm Claudia Meza, and this is what Portland's talking about. Emma, I hate to start this conversation with a bummer, but can you catch us up with what the Cascadia subduction zone is? Because there's a lot of people that have moved to this area, and I don't think they've heard about it.
You know, a few months ago, I would have said, no, that can't be true. Everyone knows about this earthquake. But having had the past few months I've had, I agree with you. There are a lot of people in Portland that are learning about this very scary thing. And yeah, I will happily bum us out more. So there is a fault line that's about 100 miles off the coast. It stretches up from Vancouver, BC, down to like Northern California. And that fault line would produce what we call a megathrust earthquake. And that could be, you know, well over a 9 magnitude earthquake, which is just really hard to conceptualize based on earthquakes that we've had here on the West Coast. But, you know, for example, it would be like 1,000 times, the magnitude would be 1,000 times more than the Northridge quake in California. That quake was like 20 seconds long. This could be over 5 minutes long. And it's, you know, predicted to be one of the worst natural disasters in the history of North America. And that is the train that goes by my house.
Oh, that's fine. We're good with trains. Yeah.
It's the Kenton experience, the Kenton podcast experience.
Oh my God. Are we going to hear cars racing next?
Oh, I mean, I've written quite a few exposés about Portland International Raceway, so don't get me started. I have many thoughts about that's for a different podcast interview. We can talk about the lead they use in their gasoline.
Oh, man. Well, your book imagines the story of this huge megathrust earthquake's aftermath. It starts at, of all places, Portland's IKEA out by the airport, and tells the story of your very pregnant protagonist, Annie, walking back across the city to find her husband. How did you plan which places to include in your character's path through the city? Because I got to tell you, I super enjoyed having, it was like a movie in my head because because we live here. And so I could see everything that was being written, and I loved it.
Yeah.
How did you figure that out?
Well, there was a lot of trial and error. The idea for the book came to me when I was very pregnant at IKEA at Cascade Station, and the building started to shake. And I thought like, oh, that's the big one. And what it ended up being was like a truck that was backing up to the loading zone and had somehow like caused the building to shake. And kind of the second I realized it wasn't the big one, I had this idea for this book. And it was always about a pregnant woman trying to walk home and sort of having this like real flashpoint moment to reevaluate her life with a lot of clarity that maybe none of us otherwise get. Mm-hmm. But in terms of where the book took place, there was so much trial and error. I have to say that there was definitely a zoo scene at one point in this book. There were the Swifts. I became obsessed with, like, I have to get the Swifts in there. I basically made a list of every Portland place I'm obsessed with and was like, somehow I will get every...
and I will destroy it in my house.
Exactly. Every restaurant that was ever mean to me is demolished. The place that fired me, gone.
In flames. The ultimate burn book.
Oh God. I just think I wanted to do like homage to all these places that I loved in Portland, and it became very hard to do geographically. And I also was trying to time it to, the heat of the day and the sunset, and trying to time it to the pace of her walking, and trying to be conscientious of like liquefaction zones and flooding zones and which bridges would be down. And so it definitely was a lot of Tetris. And this is the route that she ultimately ended up with. But there were many, many routes while I wrote this book.
So I live in St. John's, and I love that the only St. John's shout out in the book was like, it's on fire.
Gone. Well, St. John's was mean to me. Did you know that, Claudia? No, so actually the original book ended in Pier Park.
Oh, that would have been so...
Yeah.
You would have gone to the zone of like, that's all the gasoline, that's all the jet fuel. Why would you go to Pier Park? Frisbees?
I'm from North Portland, so I think to me, like, it was, it was hard for me to imagine the book ending anywhere. Well, and also there's I forgot about this draft of this book. There, when you're walking along, I guess, Columbia, there's that really cool, weird railroad tunnel.
Yeah.
And that you can like walk through. And so for a long time, she was walking through the railroad tunnel, and there was this sort of like very dreamy scene. I won't get into details because it will kind of spoil the book, but some really evocative things happened in this like very spooky pitch black railroad tunnel. And that's kind of on the way to St. John's. And Pier Park is just very sentimental to me. It's a place that holds a lot of significance. And St. John's, I worked for many years in St. John's. Mm-hmm. This book was like my own obsessive project. It wasn't something I thought anybody would really ever read. And so, of course, for me, it's just so full of nostalgia and sentiment.
Well, aside from you blowing up St. John's, the most harrowing part of the book to me involved a school that's collapsed. And it was a fictional school, which I thought was a nice, classy touch, by the way. I'm assuming that you're like, this would be too scary to just like actually give it, an actual school's name.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right. So here's the quote. The south side of the school is flattened as if a giant foot had come along and stepped down, pressing the entire structure into the ground. How much of that passage is rooted in fact, and how much was just you being like, this is a really cool image? Would that actually happen to our schools during an earthquake?
Yeah, absolutely, yes. And I can speak more about that specifically, but to the point of that passage, I did an enormous amount of research on what happens to brick schools after earthquakes. And so I wrote that passage looking at a photo of a brick school after a much less significant earthquake than the one we're talking about. And I also had not only like a seismic engineer read that chapter, but also had a neighborhood emergency team leader read that whole chapter to make sure that the way I was describing that situation of sort of parents arriving at a school that had collapsed and there being children inside, that was actually really accurate to how the net teams are talking about that right now today in Portland. And also I interviewed first responders who had been to collapsed school sites in Kashmir and also in China. So, it was so important to me. The school that is a fictional school. I set it at Revolution Hall, which is no longer a school and is, I believe, retrofitted at this point. But the school that is sort of loosely based around is a school where one of my closest friends' child attends. And I realized that I just could not write that scene with a real school. And so, no, I took very, very seriously. This is a work of fiction. And also I took many parts of it as seriously as I would take a nonfiction book. If not more seriously. And, I think in Portland, what a lot of us don't know, what I didn't know until I started working on this book, is that there are over a dozen schools that are unreinforced masonry and would partially collapse, if not fully collapse, in the case of even a smaller earthquake, which a lot of people truly don't understand. And, as part of this book, I sort of launched onto an investigative journey. I've spent the past 2 years investigating this and finally was able to get Portland Public Schools to release this assessment they had done that showed that really like an enormous amount of our schools are not even just the brick ones, an enormous amount of our schools are not equipped for a large earthquake.
Yeah. All right, well, let's take a quick break here. And when we come back, how the school collapse chapter in Tilt influenced the public Portland school bond that just passed. Paint Care has 3 simple rules to help you reduce paint waste. 1, buy the right amount of paint for the job. 2, use up what you have. And 3, recycle the rest at conveniently located drop-off sites in your neighborhood. Paint Care even offers direct pickups for households and businesses with more than 100 gallons of leftover paint. Learn more or find a paint drop-off site near you at paintcare.org/3simplerules. Time slows down in Walla Walla, Washington. And that's the point. You can experience a vibrant and relaxing getaway, going at your own pace, doing as much or as little as you want. And if you love to eat delicious food and drink good wine, this is your destination. Walla Walla Valley produces everything from wheat to asparagus to strawberries to, of course, their famous Walla Walla sweet onions. So there's plenty of farm-fresh, fine dining from celebrated chefs to explore. But it's also home to more than 130 wineries offering a variety of expressions and vineyard experiences. And all of this is just a beautiful and scenic 4-hour drive from Portland. Go to wallawalla.org to plan your visit today. That's wallawalla.org. Still looking for summer activities that get your kids out of the house but also provide enrichment and personal growth? Well, you're in luck. Northwest Children's Theater award-winning summer camps still have spaces open for ages 4 through 14. Both half-day and full-day camps take place in Northeast, Southeast, and downtown Portland now through August 22nd, and you can choose from more than 30 exciting camp titles including Bluey's Big Adventure, Mario's Super Party, The Legend of Percy, Mary Poppins, and so much more. Northwest Children's Theater summer camps are the perfect opportunity for a budding theater kid to enhance their performance skills and also make new friends. View the full schedule and register at nwcts.org. That's nwcts.org. Well, you reported on the state of our schools for Willamette Week in March, arguing that the upcoming PPS bond measure needed to do more to seismically update our schools, which, aligns with the research you were doing. The bond has since passed. Why don't you think it goes far enough? It's a lot of money. Like, what should it have included maybe that it doesn't right now?
Well, in a true Hail Mary moment, I've talked to dozens and dozens of people who have dealt with this all over the world. And they all were basically like, oh, nothing's going to happen. Like, you will not make any change until an earthquake happens. Nothing will happen until
people die.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And amazingly enough, that article caused a lot of concern among parents. I think that the school scene in my book, understandably, has caused a lot of distress, which is not my intention, and which was sort of ethically a big challenge I had to grapple with. And kind of last minute, a few members of the school board, because they were getting pressure from a lot of parents at Beverly Cleary and at some of the other more dangerous schools, they proposed a resolution that basically said if the bond passed, that they would fix, I believe, 10 of the most dangerous URM schools. And that resolution passed, and then the bond passed. And so it was sort of in this incredible, there was a moment that a lot of those parents were meeting at Beverly Cleary to talk about this. And a lot of, we were all in tears. Some of those parents have been working on this for a decade. I've been working on this for years. We all had pretty much become resigned that nothing was going to change. And as a real special moment, I have never been someone who really has a lot of faith that art can cause change, to be blunt, or even that journalism can cause change, to be blunt. It hasn't been my experience. It often kind of feels like I'm shouting into the void. And for years working on this book, when I would have doubt, my writing coach would just say, just think about the schools. Just think about what's your biggest dream for this? And I was like, that we could have some resolution for these really dangerous schools. And so, it truly was the proudest career moment I've ever had. And just a really special moment for, I think, everybody who's been working on this for so long.
Yeah. Well, now they have to follow through.
Yeah.
Well, how does seismic retrofitting actually work? What do they still need to do to these buildings? In my head, it's all brick. How do you reinforce brick? That was the scene that you put in. I think the stress that most parents will have is what you wrote, is that they won't be able to do anything. They won't be able to go into the building because it's not safe. they won't be allowed. And you're going to just want to be there brick by brick, taking everything apart, trying to find your child, and you can't. So I'm wondering how a retrofit would prevent that.
I mean, I think what we see in earthquakes all the time, what we're seeing in Gaza right now is like parents are going to go into the building. People are going to save their kids, period. And so, there will not be the level of public official response that like you won't really be allowed to do something because that's just not the type of preparedness.
You have a net person with the hat being like, don't do it for at least 15 minutes. Come on.
Totally. And the net people are, a lot of people don't know this, the net people are trained to not go into dangerous buildings, which a lot of us are like, well, the nets will save us. And that's actually not, they also like train school teachers to not go back into the buildings because so many people die or cause sort of further destruction after earthquakes trying to save people. But of course, any parent is going to do that anyways. And that I think is just a given. And I'm not an engineer. The way that you, on a very simple level, the way that you retrofit is that you create a steel frame within the walls of a brick building. And so the bricks will typically fall outwards, but what you don't want is the roof and the other additional floors to kind of sandwich down. Yeah. And so the frame creates that stability.
Oh, so they put like a frame inside the bricks or like?
You can put it inside the bricks. You can also put it on the inside of the wall. So a lot of buildings here, if you're in retrofitted brick buildings, you will see these like massive steel braces and massive steel poles. And that's what that is. But a brick building, an old brick building can never be as safe as a new building, but it can certainly be a lot safer than it is now.
Yeah. What would it take to truly make our schools earthquake resilient in our city, do you think?
I don't know off the top of my head. I know that number for the unreinforced masonry schools is like about $110 million to retrofit them. I think that number is more like $800 million if we're talking about all the schools. I think it's going to be a really big lift. And I do think, to be fair to the school board, like they are navigating so many issues. And when I spoke with the school board, they were like, we of course we want these schools to be earthquake safe. We also want HVAC. We also need clean water. Like, yes, we need all these things.
We need so many things.
We need so many things. And so I do think that it's a real serious struggle. And in other places, there's often been a lot of, like California, a lot of smaller earthquakes that then force you to rebuild. And we don't have that here. So I think like we are sort of up against this like very large looming shadow that we can really only imagine. Whereas like our HVAC issues are here today, every day. What I heard over and over again is like, until there is uproar from the parents, nothing will change. And, as many nights as I have like sort of lain awake thinking I hate how much I'm scaring parents or having really hard conversations with the other moms at daycare drop-off, I am incredibly grateful that this very dark nightmare of my mind has caused some uproar.
Well, you recently told OPB that somehow you're no longer anxious about the earthquake. You're just spreading this anxiety elsewhere. Help us. How did you get there? And can you also get me there with flying?
Oh, okay. We should talk about that offline. Okay. Yeah. This really did come from a terrible anxiety that I had. I was just truly obsessed with the earthquake. And I felt really isolated because it was like a time where if you talked about it, everyone sort of blew you off, or it didn't seem like people were all on the same page about how serious this was. And I became really obsessed with like what it would actually be like, which is why I sort of brought this like journalistic view to like, I need to truly know what it will be like, not just be guessing in a fictional sense. And I think, I started this book, I was pregnant, I was very scared, and I was in a place of like, I need to protect myself and my child, and I need, water, I need guns, I need medicine. And writing this book and learning about how people navigate disaster and learning about how many people in Portland are trying to prepare, learning about what actually happens to somebody in a moment of disaster, actually having a baby and becoming a mother and starting to sort of see myself in this like communal collection of parents. I think I really shifted to feeling, not as scared of the earthquake and not like I need to leave Portland, but like, I actually want to be here in Portland when the earthquake happens. I'm the person that Portland needs. I want to help Portland rebuild. Yeah, it's going to be really hard. Why would a Portlander leave? Yeah. Right. And of course I want to be prepared, not for my kids, but for like the elderly people who live down the street. Like, of course, this is a communal rebuilding. And like, what is it to me in a sense, truly, if my children and I have moved to, Brooklyn and are safe, what is that to me when everyone I know and love is here, not safe? a fair amount of this book I wrote while the genocide in Gaza was beginning. And it is, you can certainly see in some parts of the book how much that has impacted it. And I have very much had this moment becoming a mother where kind of the line between my child's safety and another child's safety starts to blur. And you just start to see things a little bit more communally. And so for me, yeah, I am not scared of the earthquake anymore. And I would say on a practical level, but all of that sort of gushy philosophy aside, on a practical level, if you are a person that is very scared of the earthquake, it is not going to be as bad as you are thinking. It's going to cause a lot of destruction. Mm-hmm. Yes, people are going to die and people are going to get injured, but it is not like the whole city is going to die. Like every building will collapse on every person. What is going to be really hard about it is going to be the weeks after. And a lot of people are so scared that they're like, why would I prepare? I'm just going to die. That's not what's going to happen. You're not going to die. And you're going to be really bummed that you don't have meals and water and like maybe a portable bathroom solution. And so that click for me was like, oh, I am going to survive. I'm not going to have enough water. And I'm going to have to explain to the vulnerable people on my street why I, healthy, young, capable human, do not have enough to share with them. And that no longer aligned with my value. That then became incongruent with my perception of myself. And so it really forced me to take the earthquake seriously and to be prepared in a pretty reasonable way.
Yeah. It's so funny you said that because when my partner and I, she went through the NET training. So of course we had like backpacks and all that stuff that you're supposed to have ready to go. And so when we were planning for our own food pantry, all that emergency stuff, she totally planned. She was like, well, we got to think about our neighbor because they're 20 and they're not going to be thinking about this. So like we bought extra for them just because we're like, well, we're going to have to share,
I love that. I wish I was a person that intuitively was there. It makes me sad I had to write a whole book to become a generous communal person.
You know what got me there was reading World War Z.
Oh my God. Okay.
Which, by the way, if you ever wanted to do another version of this, that it would be such a cool format. You know how they would go from like country to country, but you just go from neighborhood to neighborhood.
Oh my God.
Of Portland and how each neighborhood, would survive.
I would love that. That was the biggest disappointment of my book was that it was only one person's perspective and they only were walking. So like it was just such a limit to sort of what we could explore. Mm-hmm. Like for a while I was like, oh yeah, it's going to be great. As she walks, she's going to meet a geologist who just happens to know everything about earthquakes and what the city is doing. And it was like, no, you can't have that happen because I had learned so much, but really couldn't shove it into that book.
Well, like I was saying, your book was very visual to me. It really played out like a movie. Like some of the chapters, you can just feel that scene end and the next one start. I'm sure you've thought of it. Who would play your main character? Who would play Annie?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so
I have an idea, just so you know.
Okay.
Let's see if they align.
Okay. The person that I would want to play Annie is Nicola Coughlan. She's the Bridgerton star.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. She's amazing. She's Irish.
Yeah.
She was in Derry Girls. Love Derry Girls.
Super pro-Palestine. So funny.
My favorite. Yeah.
Right? That.
So funny. Okay.
Yes.
I guess she could get the accent down.
Oh, yeah. That's a good point. No, she could do it. She can do anything. That woman is a queen. She can rewrite the book. Okay. What do you have?
Okay. I have Alison Tolman. Do you know who that is?
No.
She's like the cop in Fargo. I forget. I don't know if it's season 2. Do you know what I'm saying?
Love.
I think she actually might be pregnant in that. Yeah.
Okay. Love. I'm fully in. If I am talking to movie people, I'm going to text them right now.
Okay. Go ahead. Alison Tolman.
Love. It's her. It's nobody.
Yeah. No, your idea was really good. I am just a little a little hesitant in believing that
she can do the accent.
Yeah. Because she can do a really good British accent, but that's because she's right there,
Yeah.
Yeah. But we'll see. Yeah.
We'll see.
Well, Emma, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk through some of the ideas in your book. If you haven't read it, Tilt, it's out now at your local bookstore. And it was such a fast read just because it's such a kick to have your city be that place, where the story's unfolding. Anyhow, I recommend it to anyone who really wants to, go through all the feelings.
Yeah, I really feel like if you are already scared of, people always say, will this scare me? And I'm like, if you're already scared of the earthquake, it will make you feel better. And if you haven't heard about the earthquake, I do not offer refunds. That's it. then I am sorry. So many people will be like, I'll get like these 4 a.m. Instagram DMs. I have been up all night. I can't sleep. And I'm like, oh my God, I cannot help you. I've also been up all night. I have 2 young children and I am so sorry.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again.
Thank you.
That's all for today here on CityCast Portland. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with a friend, rate or leave us a review. It really does help us out. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more from around the city. Until then, see you at Slim's.